What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham Gius and Matthews, break down all the original programming that I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest episode of Table for Three, as a bunch of new episodes were filmed over WrestleMania weekend. This one being called Smash Hits, featuring the likes of Brian James, aka Road Dogg, Jeff Jarrett, and Elias. Another good episode from these three. So we kick off the episode with Elias and Jeff Jarrett officially meeting. Jeff Jarrett has kept up with Elias's work on WWE TV in recent months, seeing a lot of the comparisons being made to Elias being the modern-day Jeff Jarrett. I would say Elias is better. It's purely my opinion. Not to say Elias will go on to win the WCW World title, but the guy's good. The guy's very good. Anyway, Elias congratulates Jeff on the Hall of Fame speech. So I would assume this took place on Saturday night or on Sunday. It did take place over WrestleMania weekend, but it was after the Hall of Fame, which is cool. So he congratulates Jeff on his great Hall of Fame speech, which I agree. I thought it was a very, very good speech from Double J. I wrote down James here, so I'll call Road Dogg Brian James. James talks about how Jeff never really knew. They break the ice pretty early on. You would think that, in how closely associated they were with each other early on in their respective careers in WWE, that they would be like really good friends, and you kind of get that vibe from the Hall of Fame speech. But James admits here that he never knew Jarrett really cared about him until he made those comments in his speech. And Jarrett kind of like pauses for a second. He's like, you never really knew that? He's kind of shocked that James is admitting this, but he's like, yeah, dude, I know we were always on decent terms, and you weren't really in the best of places, and neither was I, but when I kind of helped you out with that was really when I kind of realized how much I meant to you. So kind of a heartwarming moment to kick off the show, which is cool. And they talk about being on the road together early on in their respective WWE careers, when Road Dogg was doing the roadie gimmick, and no pun intended, but kind of growing up in the business together. It never got to a point. Elias asks him, did it ever get to a point with you guys where you guys didn't want to talk to each other, where you weren't on speaking terms? And despite the fact they were in separate companies for a few different years, in the 2000s, and later on when Road Dogg came back to WWE, they admit that it never got to a point where they didn't want to talk. I mean, I'm sure there were points where they weren't the best of friends, but they were never at a point where they didn't want to talk at all and they were on completely bad terms. Jarrett and James kind of talk about their respective problems growing up in the business with drugs and alcohol, and Elias jokingly says, if you do drugs and you party, you're going to have a lot of success. And I know he says that jokingly, but honestly, in the cases of a lot of those people, like during the Attitude Era and before that, it's kind of true. Not to say that you would not be successful if you didn't do drugs or you didn't party, but a lot of those guys in like the 80s and 90s did a lot of drugs, and they were very successful. Not to say that they would, they would not be successful if they didn't do that stuff, but it's true to an extent. Maybe not so much today. You'd ruin your career and be written off as the self-destructive asshole who ruined what could have been. But back then, it was kind of true. So Elias talks about being given a guitar as a kid, played a lot of Eric Clapton songs, and after Jarrett asks him, or Road Dogg asks him, how did you get into the guitar gimmick? Was that something you did growing up? Blah blah blah. Jarrett talks about not working as a babyface in other promotions before coming to WWE. And he praised Brian James' singing skills, that if it wasn't for him, that gimmick never really would have taken off with Be My Baby Tonight or With My Baby Tonight, whatever the song is. He talks about how Brian James is a great singer, he could do all this stuff, he's one of the best. And Brian James talks about how his brother, Lance Cassidy, who I think is Scott Armstrong, referee Scott Armstrong, if I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to have the same gimmick. The whole singing thing didn't really work out. They gave it to James instead. And they talk about doing the roadie gimmick and how it really worked out for them, and how Jeff Jarrett would tease singing the song for years, With My Baby Tonight, on WWE TV, but the lighting wouldn't be right and the audio would be off, and it never really came to fruition because Jeff Jarrett never really sang the song. So that was the whole part of the gimmick, where they would advertise him singing the song on Raw or on WWE TV, and it never happened because he didn't actually sing the song. And obviously it would come out soon after on television that it was Road Dogg behind the success of that song the entire time. Anyway, so Elias said he wanted to keep wrestling and his guitar hobby separate, and which makes sense because if you do watch Elias's early work on NXT before the whole Drifter thing, which I think he debuted in late 2015, he was doing that as early as Brooklyn, TakeOver Brooklyn, the first show. Because I remember I was at that show and I saw a dark match with Bull Dempsey against Elias Sampson, and Elias had a guitar with him. But he wasn't doing that beforehand. Like, he has a match against Rhino in Rhino's first match back for WWE in NXT, and Elias Sampson is just another jobber. So he was right that he wanted to keep his wrestling and guitar hobby separate, but he brought his guitar in NXT one day into the Performance Center, and Dusty said, nope, I'm into it, used it on TV. And obviously that's what kind of helped him, his character take off on programming soon after. He also admits that he has his own songs coming out soon. We got a clip of the Elias Unplugged special coming to the WWE Network soon. That was, I don't believe I'm not exactly sure what the entire special consists of, but I am pretty sure that it will feature the concert he held on Bourbon Street over WrestleMania weekend last month, which is pretty cool. That and some other songs he recorded in studio, so again, it's not really like a tongue-in-cheek thing. I'm pretty sure he's releasing like actual songs, which is pretty funny, but yeah, and Jeff Jarrett and Brian James are very happy for his success. So this is where things get interesting. Jeff Jarrett, they talk about, the history of people singing their own theme songs from Shawn Michaels and a few others. And Jeff Jarrett mentions, that AJ Styles' TNA theme song fit him very, very well in TNA. But when he heard the WWE theme song, he's like, you know what, that fits you really well. That fits you even better. It's not the same song. It's not even close to being the same song as Get Ready to Fly. But he mentions TNA, by the way. He outright mentions the initials TNA, which is nothing new for this show, because they've used TNA footage on the show before, as of last week, from the Global Wrestling Network. But anyway, he's talking about AJ Styles' awesome TNA theme song and how his current WWE theme fits him very well. Then Brian James talks about how that theme song, it was originally written for James Storm, which I was shocked. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you listen to the theme song. It's kind of country-esque a little bit. I can't see that fitting James Storm. Now, James Storm did have another theme they used for him in NXT, for the 2 appearances he made on NXT TV. It was nothing like the song that AJ's using now, but he did have his own song. It was kind of generic. The AJ song's a lot better. But yeah, it was supposed to go to James Storm, but he passed up the opportunity to come to WWE. He went on his own path, aka re-signing with TNA. Now they don't want him, which kind of bothers me. But anyway, so he turns down the WWE offer. They gave it to AJ instead, starting at the Royal Rumble, and now I can't imagine anyone else using that song but AJ Styles, so a pretty crazy story there. Jeff Jarrett talks about hitting multiple people with his guitar, the most famous people including Gary Coleman and some guy named Beetlejuice, and no, not the movie character, though Brian James does make multiple Beetlejuice references in the remainder of the episode. He also hit Fabulous Moolah with the guitar, and he says that was one of his favorite guitar shots. And I mean, he doesn't say it, obviously, but in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, she was a piece of shit. I'm sure it was one of your favorite guitar shots, because she probably deserved it. Anyway, Elias, on the other hand, he lists off multiple wrestlers that he's hit with the guitar over the years, including John Cena on the 25th anniversary of Raw a couple months back. And how big of a spot that was for him. On the 25th anniversary of Raw, Elias lays out John Cena. Who would have ever seen the day that would have happened? That was pretty cool. Again, James makes multiple Beetlejuice references that Jeff Jarrett does not get. Though he does bring up, James that is that a mini story here that on the road many, 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 many years ago, at every hotel they would stay at, Brian James would order Dumb and Dumber for $10. And it was the best $9.99 he ever spent, he said. He would watch it every single day they were on the road for like well over 2.5 years. And when he wasn't watching the movie, he was making Dumb and Dumber references all day, every day. He also admits that the guitar shots, he might have hit someone with a guitar once, he admits, at like a house show in Australia. But beyond that, he was usually on the receiving end of a lot of guitar shots over the years. And he admits, it fucking hurts. I can imagine it looks like it hurts. But, he says no one comes into work any day and says, hey, I want to get hit with a guitar today. You know what I mean? So he's taken a lot of guitar bumps over the years, so if anyone can talk about how much they hurt, it's Brian James. James and Jarrett joke about not knowing the words to The Baby Tonight during the Hall of Fame, and which was pretty comical, but I loved it. I mean, it was kind of a train wreck, but in the best way possible. People liked it. It was a nice little trip down memory lane for fans of the WWE back in the early 90s, mid-90s. And then they do their own rendition of Baby Tonight on this edition of Table for Three with Elias on guitar, Brian James and Jarrett singing the lyrics, and Jarrett has a guitar too. I don't think he's playing the guitar though while he's singing. But yeah, so that's what they're doing here, and they're singing Baby Tonight, and it goes off pretty well. A lot better than it did at the Hall of Fame. Now then again, they're not singing the whole song. They're really just singing the first like 2 verses or so. But they do a pretty decent job, if I do say so myself. I thought it came along pretty nicely. And that was it. That ended the episode on a high note. So smash hits featuring Brian James, Jeff Jarrett, and Elias. I thought it was a good episode, very good episode. Definitely check it out on the WWE Network. And like I said, the AJ Styles, James Storm note was interesting. Easily the most newsworthy part of the episode, but the entire episode is enjoyable. So certainly check it out in its entirety under the original section on the WWE Network. So that being said, guys, we will be back next week reviewing whatever's airing on the WWE Network tonight after Raw. Until then, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.